New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Welcome to Ministers Talking a weekly program where Rev BRZ and Rev Z and their guests chat about current affairs, world events, spiritual principles, and any old they want to talk about. Based on the New Thought philosophy and ancient wisdoms, Ministers Talking shares a visionary perspective of the evolving spiral called spiritual living. Join us each week as we explore the emerging paradigm of life on planet Earth and beyond.
And hello again, dear ones. Rev BRZ with you over here.
Rev Z right here.
And this is Ministers Talking Shit. Happens every Friday morning at 7 a.m. Mountain Time here on the New Thought Media Network. Chance for Z and I to get together and I'll talk about anything we want to talk about. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it gets a little heated just because we're both passionate guys. And, we gather together and chomp on some stories, and then whatever shows up is what shows up. So good morning, Z. How you doing, sir?
Oh, good morning. I tell you, all the rain we're getting in Colorado, it helps me get a fresh perspective, I think, maybe.
It reminds me why I don't live in the Pacific Northwest.
Boy.
Folks, there's weather everywhere, my understanding. Now, I saw this headline this morning. California is expected to experience a heat wave for the next 2 weeks, at least. Yeah. So poor Florida. California. Florida's our other problem. California, our prayers are going out to California as they're anticipating seeing a heat wave for the next 2 weeks, which doesn't bode well for a nice transition and melting of all the snow that's left up in them hills. It's still snowing in the Sierra Nevadas. It was last week. This could cause some serious flooding if they see a 2-week wave. Feels like California just keeps getting pummeled and pummeled and pummeled.
And the interesting thing about this weather, there's already been I saw it this morning that there was a hurricane has already formed. It didn't do anything. But they have pictures of a hurricane that already formed way back in like February or something. And with all of the crazy weather patterns, hurricane season starts in 20 days. And so the meteorologists are chomping at the bit, trying to figure it, for all the reasons, right? And
I think we can answer this in two words. Climate change. If there is any question left about whether our climate is changing,
yeah,
on a planetary scale, it would seem yes.
Yeah, I mean, and they got like a cyclone, which is the Pacific side of a hurricane, headed toward the Bay of Bengal, where there's some refugee camp. That they also fearful of is, it's like 1 million people there or something. I mean, it's just
Mother Nature.
Yeah. That commercial is not nice. It's not nice to fool Mother Nature is becoming true.
Exactly. Hey, good morning, Wayne. Howdy from Calgary. I'm assuming that's Wayne. If not, my apologies. Our dear friend Linda's with us this morning from Woodland Park. Yeah, mountains still have snow, and it's going to melt, but we don't need it to melt too fast. That's always the thing. You can't have that snowpack melting too fast. Shaybird, good morning. Good to see you, dear one.
Great. And there's flooding. I mean, it's literally almost been raining here in the Denver metro area for 3 days straight. And so now we got flooding and some road closures, and the airport had to close down for a minute. Um,
Yeah, and that's very unusual. Right, if it rains 20 minutes, that's a long time here. So 3 days. This isn't like the East Coast or the Pacific Northwest where you can go a week without seeing the sun. We get a little antsy. We don't see the sun every half hour. So yeah, definitely. But let's be real. We got a lot less problems than other states because Florida would appear to be off their meds. Or at least those in charge at the government seem to be off their medications in Florida. They're at it again. Ron DeSantis passed a bill yesterday making it so that no one can release the history of his travel, and making it so that you can't get the data on any travel that the governor's office has approved.
Wow.
So if Ron DeSantis were to ask you and I to go somewhere on the government's behalf, all those travel records would be sealed. Begs the question, what's the man trying to hide?
Yeah. And with throwing that on the heels of the other bill, I think it's S99, where they're
999,
yeah, where they are proposed. It's passed. It's in the Senate now for the final approval, where no money for a state that's given by the feds or the state to a university can go towards any diversity, inclusion, and belonging programs. It'd be illegal on no critical race theory. So I can send an agitator to a thing to start some problems just to prove the fact that you shouldn't have these. I mean, this is a disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah. And on top of the anti-trans laws and bills that are now that have been passed recently in Florida, it seems like they started with "Don't Say Gay" and now they're up to "Don't Say Black."
Yeah.
And
or Asian or Latina or Latinx. Just walk around with a piece of tape on your mouth. You'll be good.
That's what they want, right? I think that's what he wants. I was in doing a little bit of digging on him recently. I found a story. His press secretary, I think it was, beginning of 2022, put out a statement that basically was in support of Nazis. Or I'm sorry, no. She was saying that Nazi sympathizers were actually Democratic plants. So, exactly. So, it would appear there is a white nationalist, white supremacist, at the very least, belief system operating within that government, within the Florida state government. Now, I'm sure there are many people, and it can't be everybody. I'm not going to say it's everybody, because I am sure there are people of color working in that state government. And I'm positive there's got to be people of color working against all these things. And I know there's good grassroots activity happening to try to mobilize the populace there to knock these things down. But the truth of the matter is, they're getting through. This anti-trans bill is law. And the HB 999 hasn't been passed yet, hasn't been signed hasn't been sent to DeSantis's desk. But if we're now limiting the ability for people of diverse of anything other than white to congregate, to receive any state funding, right? That means the state can't help you file a form or can't help you to get something moving. And how does any of this benefit the people of Florida?
There is a program. I want everybody to go and look it up. It's called Invisible History: Middle Florida's Hidden Roots. You can get the documentary. It's a documentary outlining the racial historical roots of Florida, which happens in, unfortunately, my hometown of Tallahassee, which was the seat of slavery, and it's on PBS, and I think you could probably get it on Amazon for $2. Download it from from Amazon for like $2 or one of them, and it talks about the whole racial history of North Florida and the Panhandle, a little bit of what happened there, and it's still going on there. And that's why DeSantis can bring up these crazy bills to do these crazy things, because that mentality still lives.
Still is. There has to be a solution. And Z, you and I started talking about this just briefly before we came on air, that is this type of behavior, is this type of thought process the dark side of New Thought, if you will? Now, we know that Donald Trump has had some New Thought type influences, let's say. I'm not going to say he studied it. I'm not going to say but we know that he attended quite a few and was part of. So is this the dark side? Is this the side that says I can use this power for my own good and screw everybody else? And the heck with anybody that doesn't look like me, doesn't talk like me, doesn't act like me, doesn't believe like me.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this at some point, but I think what has happened or is beginning to happen is the terminology, the ideas, the affirmations and things have that from a New Thought perspective are used to empower someone's life and to raise them from one state of consciousness and level of being to another, has now been commoditized and is being used to make money. Now, we know money is just another form of energy, and we know we all need energy. But when it's done in a predatory way, when it's done in a way that starts approaching on charlatanism, or being a charlatan selling, snake oil, if you will, there's a problem, because now you're going to take something that has for centuries helped people's life and help people move from one state to another. It's going to get watered down and ridiculed and
used. I don't want to say improperly, but misused.
Yeah, used divisively, if nothing else, or divisively, if nothing else.
Yep. And you said something really important there, and I want everybody to really hear it. New Thought, part of its whole gig, if you will, is to raise people from one state of consciousness to another. Not to get shit, not to get stuff, not to, right? And it's unfortunate, because the easiest thing to do with this philosophy is get stuff. Princes, palaces, parking places, right? It's not so good on winning lottery numbers, but it's you. But that's not the original, I believe, in purpose or intent. But again, as you said, to raise people to higher levels of, or new levels of consciousness. And our friend Shay says every revolution starts with oppression. People will rise up, but I want people to rise up in consciousness. I don't just want people out on the street screaming and yelling, this is wrong, this is bad. Now, don't get me wrong. If you live in Florida, now is the time to speak up. But speak up from that place of desiring a higher consciousness for humanity, not just speak up because I'm not getting mine.
Right.
Not just speaking up because you're trying to take away my social clubs or other activities, but speak up because eliminating diversity and diversity, equity, and inclusion, eliminating the possibility for that culture to emerge, that's a misuse. That is not moving to a higher state of consciousness. If anything, that's trying to revert back to a lower state of consciousness or hold on to the limited state of consciousness that's operating at the moment.
Yeah. And you know, when the more and more we continue to move in the digital social media age, we begin to see more and more people are concerned only about themselves, right?
Yeah.
If you look, it's, you know, what about me? What about, okay, yeah, I get it. Everybody wants to be respected and everybody should be respected. But when that happens at the expense of everybody else, and you can't see the forest for the tree because, you know, you're creating and we'll continue to create an environment where our children are being affected because they see it. And so now something that used to be something that was an occasional event, it is now becoming an everyday occurrence for kids as young as 5 years old, creating YouTube channels to get some stuff, to be seen, to be popular. And then unfortunately, when some reality kicks in, a lot of these YouTubers and social media personalities are you know, getting addicted to substances or taking their own lives, and we don't need that.
Yeah, you're right. You said the magic words. You said YouTube, so I got to tell this story now. I found this one this week, folks. It just made me go, what? A 29-year-old California man, Trevor Daniel Jacobs, admitted to federal authorities that he crashed his airplane for the clicks. Appears this man has a YouTube channel, and he had a small prop plane, took it up, rigged it with all kinds of cameras, and then there's video of him. He claims the engine died and he stepped out of the plane. Now, he was wearing a parachute the whole time, so they know he planned it. He didn't attempt to glide the plane to a landing. He was way high enough that he could have had plenty of time to try to glide this plane down and find a landing spot. But he grabs his selfie stick and films himself parachuting out of the plane, and then films the plane crashing. Doesn't report the plane crash for 2 days. Then when he does, he gives FAA officials the wrong location of the wreckage. While they can't find the wreckage, he and a buddy slip in the middle of the night and clean up the wreckage and destroy the evidence of the crash. God. Yes, they have taken his pilot's license, and yes, he is going to plead guilty to federal charges. The article I saw didn't say anything about how long he might be incarcerated. But I mean, if there's anything where it needs a good long time to reflect upon your decisions, I think intentionally crashing an airplane simply to create a YouTube video because you think you're going to go viral and get rich, the narcissism is getting thick. Let's just say.
And that's crazy. I mean, and since it is a federal charge, most federal charges come in at a minimum of 5 to 10.
Yeah. he'll do his time in the federal prison system as well, which, if you're going to do a crime, go federal.
Yeah,
I've been taught that since I was a kid. So I trust that still holds. But, Linda shares something that I think is the juxtaposition of this. MLK and Nelson Mandela were both models for holding up the torch, both action and thoughts and ideals.
Yeah.
And yes, right. And they both held up a torch that cast a vision of what humanity can become. We haven't listened to that.
Mm-mm.
We're crashing airplanes for clicks now. And that's the funny one, right, folks? That's the funny one. There's a lot of other things going on out there that we probably don't know about yet. We try to uncover, we share some of the things we see, but we've got politicians that are under indictment by the Department of Justice that are signing secret deals with the country of Brazil to not be charged with forgery and every other darn thing going on. And again, now we got this guy in Florida looking to make a presidential run, looking to carry the torch of Donald Trump. Who's going to carry the Trump? Who's going to carry MLK? Who's real? Not who is going to. Let me rephrase that. Who is? Who is out there carrying the torch of MLK and Nelson Mandela? That's a harder question to answer, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, just to be perfectly honest, who's carrying the torch of Malcolm X? Who's carrying the torch of Fannie Lou Hamer? Who's carrying the torch of Ralph Bunche? I mean, we have a lot of historical figures. If we're looking at, and I'm just mentioning those from an African American Black diaspora program, there are people there who had an ideology, who had a philosophy, and a methodology of bringing about change. Now, of course, some people don't agree with the other ideologies, and that's okay, because we know it takes all ideologies to come to the center of the matter, because we see now what happens when we don't. This guy crashes a plane. That plane could have caught fire. It could have crashed in the. He can't control what that plane gonna do once he's out of it.
Right.
There's wind patterns and all kinds of stuff that could have affected where that plane went and where it crashed. And even if it's in a wooded area, it could have caught fire and started a major forest fire.
Could have crashed on top of a couple of kayakers floating down a river in a boat, having a beautiful day, and suddenly, right.
And so, when I understand a little bit about what it is. We've created a culture, we've created an environment that does not value the individual, that does not respect the individual, does not place value on someone who thinks differently than the majority, if you will. Yeah. And so people are struggling, trying to be validated, to be recognized, to be loved, to feel that they have something to contribute. And because our environment, our communities are no longer providing a safe place for that to happen, they're doing these really crazy, risky, and risque things that, I mean, you go on YouTube or Instagram, you can see almost anything taking place.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's true. Hey, good news, though. You just said you don't have to go on Twitter anymore. Elon Musk has announced that he is turning over the CEO reins to someone else. And rumor has it it's going to be a woman, and that it's going to happen within the next 6 weeks.
Ooh, that'd be interesting.
And I think you're going to like to hear this even more. Jack Dorsey is launching an alternative to Twitter called Blue Sky. You can't get in yet. It's a waiting list. But if you don't know the name, folks, Jack Dorsey's the man that originally started Twitter. before Twitter became this mess of, and I'm not going to blame all of it on Elon, but Twitter seemed to become the ultimate example of what you were just speaking about. People trying to find the validation because they don't feel validated in their communities. They don't feel validated by their state. And I'm going to take it another word deeper because, we've been talking about Sean Ginwright a little bit lately, and I finally got started on his book, The Four Pivots.
The Four Pivots.
And I'm about halfway through it at this point. And he's sharing a concept in there that I've been following for quite a while and talking about, and that is the concept of belonging.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what we're also talking about here, is people don't feel they are not only validated and accepted, but therefore it feels like I don't belong.
Mm-hmm.
And we search for those places where we can say, I belong.
Yep.
Now, New Thought Media Network, we use, one of our taglines is "Come be you." We want people to feel as if they belong, not as if, that they do belong within this community. Right now, we're only digital. Eventually, we'll be, there'll be a physical community somewhere based around this individual ministry. But I think really, if we're going to do the good work here, it's raising people up to a consciousness that they belong. And not only do they belong, but everybody does.
Yeah.
And that's what it seems Ron DeSantis and Trump and so many of these other folks out there. Tuberville just said something that he's trying to backpedal against because, called the white nationalists patriots or something like that. And we got to get away from this sense of you don't belong and start electing leaders that remind everybody they do belong.
Yeah. And having a government or having a conversation or a debate, if you will, about the polarity of anything is always healthy, right? Because it exposes a more holistic view of a thing. But when we begin to say you can't talk about certain things, or you can't expose the dark, I want to say the dark side, the opposite side of something, we begin to hide the truth. We begin to, as they say now, a lot that's happening, we begin to whitewash things so that it all blends in. It's all put together so that it just looks like it's a nice, happy thing, and that's not reality. That's not life. It rained in Colorado for 3 days yesterday. We needed some rain. Did we need 3? Well, I guess so. But it did cause some flooding and it's going to cause some snow melt and some avalanches and that's life. And we need to talk about how we do that, but don't pit one against the other. And that's what we're doing in our everyday life. We're pitting black against white, political left against political right. Those who believe everybody should have a say and those who believe that they shouldn't have a say.
Yep. And I love that we say this, because we say this a lot too, right? It's a both and universe.
Mm-hmm.
Recently, I've never done a DNA test. I've never done a genealogy. I've never done any of that stuff. And I know exactly why, because I'm afraid I'm going to find out that I'm pure white. My grandfather came from Poland and emigrated to America. My grandmother, it was staunchly British and emigrated to America. Right? As far as we know, it's pretty white back there. And I know that you do a lot of genealogy and you followed your family back much, much, much further. And my fear is that I'm still I'm still a physical representation of the purity of the lie, if you will, that is, quote, whiteness.
Yeah.
Now, I work very hard. I trust you all see that. I work very hard to stay educated, to stay on top of these topics, to deny that. And yet I really fully believe that somewhere there's got to be something in that family tree. If I could go back just far enough, I find a little bit of color, something that balances those scales, because in a universe where we are all one, then you are I and I are you. How we've got to be able to prove and demonstrate that a little bit more.
Yeah,
is what I'm getting.
Yeah. And I'm gonna step on the limb, since you don't go on the genealogy. One thing that I try to be very conscious of now is using terminology that historically is loaded, right?
Right.
We've
done it here today. I called it the dark side. You've used the term whitewash. We've both done it from our own cultural backgrounds.
Yes. Yes. And we have to stop doing that, because I saw a clip of Martin Luther King the other day, since he came up, talking about, if you look in the dictionary and you see the word black, it's everything that's evil and bad. If you look at the word white, it's everything that's pure and good. And I'm willing to tell you that the slave owner that took advantage of my grandmother was not pure, was not good.
Right.
And the DNA, I know that because I got a fourth Irish in me, right? So
I wonder where that came from. Exactly. Yeah.
And so we have to begin to be raising our level. Not that it's wrong, because that's what we've been taught. But once we know better, we have to do better. We have to raise our consciousness to a level of understanding that this was a divisive way of using language to do certain things, to put people in certain categories that no longer serve us. And if we continue to use it, we will continue to get the crazy DeSantos things and all these other things that are going on around the globe, not just here, but around the globe, that will keep us separated for a very, very long time.
So are we moving toward, this strikes for me the question, right now in the world of in gender, we're seeing a movement towards eliminating the polarities and coming to, quote, maybe a genderless pronouns. Are we headed in that direction as far coming to language that is free of racial designations? Would that even be a good thing? These are bigger questions, and folks, we're already into overtime, so we're not going to answer this one today.
We have to do a whole show on this one.
These are the big questions.
Yeah, and because I'm just gonna say, I don't want just one flavor ice cream, whether it's chocolate or vanilla or strawberry. I don't want just one fruit. I don't want just strawberries. I want blueberries and raspberries as well. And so classification of things, or identifying things so that I know what they are, is not bad. It is the labeling of something that's different from something else as bad that is the problem.
Right. Yep. Exactly. Folks, we do strive to spark conversation. And for those in the chat box, we do apologize, we're not getting to all of those comments today. But these are the self-reflective questions we have to ask each other. That we have to ask ourselves, and it helps by asking each other. And yes, Mara, I agree. Seeing who we are from the divine's perspective, because from the eye of God, we are all one.
Yeah.
But again, there isn't just one strawberry on the planet. There isn't just one flavor on the planet. Our diversity, our equity, our inclusion, all absolutely vital for the evolution of human consciousness.
Yeah. And we know from a divine perspective, you pick a tradition that talks about the creation of the universe, and somewhere in that story it says God created the diversity and it was good. So
Yes.
if we go back to the divine premise, that divine premise says everything was created exactly as it is and the differences that they have, and it's all good. We have taken the contextualization of this and misunderstood and mistold the story so that it has now become something far, far removed from what it was intended to be.
Yeah. And there is always an avenue forward.
Yes.
Right. We're not trying to go back. We're not trying to go back to a previous experience or a previous demonstration. We're looking at how do we move everything ourselves first, but everything forward. And I know we both believe all starts in consciousness, but it doesn't finish there.
No. You know, and what would be a good thing? We should. I know it would be a tough subject, boy, but we should do a show on the evolution of mankind and the different representations that it comes in: black, white, red, yellow, blue. You know, if we believe what they say about the aliens, gray. I mean, because we understand that well, as you begin to elevate, we begin to understand more that differences is what make this world what it is. Right. Mars and some of these other planets where everything is, well, not Mars, we'll take the Mars out, but let's take the moon, for example, because there's some variation in Mars. But on the moon, it's just one thing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's very little diversity on that on that, you know, sphere that's floating in the air. There's some things that, and even that does not say it's not valuable. That's why we keep trying to go there, because there is something there to be learned, to gain, to help us advance. So, you know, when we start talking about race, it becomes very touchy, right? But we can't not talk about it and act as if these things, because of race, didn't happen, because they did, and they have lasting effects. They don't just, because I don't talk about it, it doesn't go. If I got a mental health problem, just because I don't talk about it doesn't change the fact that I have a mental problem.
Right. And exactly. And the fact that things are better today for people of color doesn't mean that people of color don't feel stress and anxiety at a cultural level, because slavery happened.
Yep.
So,
and for me, going back on the genealogy, I can go back to all 4 of my grandparents being ex-slaves. So we're not talking about some long time ago. We're not talking about ancient time. Right. We're talking about within 150 years or less.
Right. We talk about on this show all the time, the Native American traditional belief of 7 generations forward, 7 generations back. Within 7 generations back, your lineage, your family culture were enslaved.
Yep.
And that does affect you. Now, how you deal with that and what you make of that and how you use that, not just to create the life for yourself, not just create a good life for yourself, but to heal that for generations forward, your kids, your grandkids. That is really our work.
Yep.
We're healing not only the ancestors, but we're healing the future generations. Yes. And remember, healing often is perceived as the elimination of something that is bad. we look at it much more from the perspective of coming into alignment with the absolute truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's still people on this planet misusing this law, these universal principles, because they just don't see the absolute truth.
Mm-hmm.
They're operating under a false belief pattern.
Yeah.
That's good though, because that means we are the promise. We have the ability to live according to a higher consciousness and call those around us forward.
Yeah. And we have a responsibility for those of us. I mean, we all have our own confusion. Let's just be clear. There's nobody got a real absolute picture of what this thing is like or should be or whatever. But those of us who are trying to raise the consciousness, trying to create a world, as our organization say, that works for all, we begin to have, as you said, we have to come to grips with who and what we are, the acceptable and the non-acceptable, the stuff that we want to put on the mantle and the stuff that we want to hide in the closet.
Right.
So that we can begin to first allow the opportunity or the possibility to say, things have to be balanced out. Things have to work. We don't always come out like the knight in shining armor. So we have to begin to work together and say, look, I got it, you got it, they got it, we all got it. Okay, now let's figure out how to minimize it, how to get beyond it, how to use it as a way to raise up humanity, to raise up ourselves, as opposed to something to put somebody down or ostracize them, or anything like that. Because we are, as someone said in the chat, we are one human family, regardless.
Right. Yeah. All right, you can do my genealogy.
Yay! Hey, there's a sale on right now until tomorrow. Most of them are about half price until Mother's Day. So go get it right now.
There we are, folks. I love it when we end on humor. All right. Well, and looking at the clock, we do got to wrap this up. So I want to say thank you, folks, for being with us today. Linda agrees we're having a great conversation. I think so, too.
Yeah.
We don't always see eye to eye, but we always do see the one.
Yeah.
And I believe that no matter what disagreements or different perspectives we may all hold, if we stay in these types of conversations, if we continue to discuss with each other and with our friends and with those we don't even know, strike up a conversation with someone in a parking lot this week and get to know somebody a little different. Yeah. It all benefits all of us. So,
yeah. Well, and I just like to say, I'm short, Robert's tall, I'm black, Robert's white, and we are brothers from other mothers, and I love him regardless of any other stuff that's going on.
Thank you. And I love you, my brother, and I would agree with every single word of that. And that didn't happen overnight, folks.
Yes.
We've been doing this for over a decade now. It took
we'll tell
while.
You that story sometime.
There we go. That's a whole show in itself, too. All right, we're going to get out of here, folks. Thanks for being with us. This is another episode of Ministers Talking Shit. We'll be back again next Friday. Stay tuned to New Thought Media Network throughout the day. We got a great day of programming. I'll be back at 5 with the good news. Reverend Michael is here at 6 o'clock with the fireside chat. Before we even get there, Lindsay Leinbach with Practicing Infinite Possibilities at 10 and the Joy Show with Rev B at 1 o'clock. So we're going to get out of here for now. Until next time, we wish you peace and richest blessings. Bye now.